The Wade Wilson case is often discussed for its brutality and the strange obsessive attraction that people found in him that minimise his crimes, and the people who were brutally murdered. But what's frequently missing from viral conversations is who were the people who were actually involved in this. Not just who Wade Wilson became, but who he was before, and more importantly, who Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz were before their lives were so violently taken. This is the full context that the TikTok edits don't show you. Hello and welcome to my channel. I've only really posted on here once before, but my shorts are full of TikTok videos that I posted on TikTok itself. I didn't really know where I wanted to take this channel or the platform or the content that I was making, but I feel like I felt something that I'm not only passionate in, but something I actually enjoy talking about, and that is the education and bringing awareness to actual issues going on in this world, definitely with true crime. And I feel like this case is a perfectly good example of how the real world can absolutely become disgusting and obsessed with a psycho killer. Before he became a headline, Wade Wilson was a deeply unstable man with a long history of violence, substance abuse, and criminal behaviour. Wade was born on May the 20th, 1994 in Florida to incredibly young teenage parents, reportedly 14 to 15 years old. Then very quickly after birth, they decided to put him up for adoption due to the fact they couldn't look after him, and both birth families considered that his life would have been considerably worse if he stayed with his birth parents. He was then adopted by Stephen and Candace Wilson, an older couple connected to the family socially through church. This is how Wade Wilson became Wade Wilson. According to the Wilsons, Wade was a joyful child, he was a really happy toddler, and he was healthy. There was nothing really strange about him in his childhood. Friends who knew him growing up state that he was a normal kid and they had normal friendships, and he was actively engaging in typical things that a kid would be involved in. Yet that didn't last for long, and he slowly started showing signs of trouble. The first reports of any sort of behavioural issues were when Wade was about 11, middle school. Wade specifically looked back on this time of his life with a neurologist, stating that he felt good until he was about 11, and when he started to feel that he was going crazy. He didn't really dive into further what made him feel like he was going crazy, but he very much remembers specifically finding this time when life started getting hard for him. This obviously indicated that there was some cognitive and emotional difficulties that he was going through, and we see these issues of acting out actively falling into his adulthood that came from his adolescence. At this current time, he was attending Deer Lake Middle School in Tallahassee, where classmates said that he was he made friends, he had his group of kids. There wasn't anything overly specific in middle school that made them think that he was a weird guy or that he would become a weird guy, the guy that he became now. But then, as you go through puberty, your hormones start to change, but in his case, he became this big rebel. So he went to Lawton Chili's High School, I think that's how you pronounce the Chili's, at the age of 14, so that's when you go from middle school to high school in America. People would then remember him smoking marijuana just before school started with this group of teens that were considered the rebels and the bad boys of school. This was the early 2000s as well, so weed was actively looked down upon, and if anything, it was illegal in the majority of places. His young start of drug use was noted throughout his prosecution, and any kind of prison time that he had, this was always mentioned as some form of defense for him, saying, hey, he started drugs young, there's a lot going on mentally for him, which obviously is not an excuse, definitely when it comes to murder. Might just be a me thing though, I don't really know about that. During this time though, he would start to distance himself from activities that he used to do, like baseball and what we call American football. He would then also start acting up in classes and showing defiance to teachers and other authority figures, like rules, or just getting his homework in on time, or just doing his homework in general. He'd just fight against it to fight against it. There was no actual logic behind it. He was just no, I'm not doing that, for the most simplest things. This would also lead him to get in a lot of trouble at school, and then getting to the point where he just wouldn't turn up to school in general because he wouldn't actually attend the detentions that he was being given to go to. Understandably, his unpredictable and aggressive behaviour landed him in trouble with other teenagers, where it was reported that he sustained 3 minor head injuries that knocked him out. All 3 of them knocked him out. These were because he was having fights with other students. Again, his neurologist states that this could have affected his emotional and mental capacity, not just the physical damage, but actually getting in fights with teenagers your age, even though peers at the time reported that Wade would be the one to kind of start them. These weren't the only head injuries that he experienced. He experienced a lot of concussions in football and baseball going through high school, but he also faced at least 2 car accidents, one of them where in a car crash he didn't have his seatbelt on and flew through the front of the car, which understandably would cause a lot of serious damage. And it did cause him a lot of serious damage as well. I'm not too sure specifically what damage it was, or if it was a long-lasting kind of damage, but there were reports of severe concussions. Yet, as I mentioned, he was getting in fights at school, and a lot of fights at school, and also disregarding authority. This was considered his first informal touch with law. This did slowly ebb into property damage, and this was all under the age of 18. Like, he was still a teenager doing this. He wasn't even like a young adult. He was still a teenager in school. Due to his involvements with minor crime as a young teen, he was projecting himself down a path that would rapidly lead into more serious offences like murder. In 2012, when he was 18 and becoming an adult, he regained contact with his birth father, Stephen Testaseca, who would have been around 35 at this point if they did have that 15-year age gap, possibly even 32. He wanted a connection and support as his adopted family wasn't supporting the path that he was going down. Understandably, because who would support their child doing heinous shit under the age of 18? I mean, who would support their child doing heinous shit in general? Personally, not me, and obviously not these guys. But as I did previously mention, they were very involved in the church, and they were very big on forgiveness. Keep this in mind for when it comes to 2019 and 2024, when it's Wade's sentencings and trials, because that's important. Yet, anyway, he wanted a connection with his biological dad, and Stephen would testify later in his trials that Wade would reach out when he was in need, but mostly for financial help, which Stephen didn't really have to be able to provide that to Wade either. Like, his biological dad wasn't just full of money. And I don't really know where he kind of got that idea that his biological dad would be able to give him loads of money. His biological dad did give him money, but not enough that would warrant you calling him constantly for money. Anyway, this is where his criminal record begins, and it starts small, obviously comparative to murder of 2 women in a brutal, fucked up way. Also in 2012, when he just turned 18, he was arrested in Leon County, Tallahassee for burglary, assault, firearm offences, and other multiple crimes which landed him his first prison sentence in 2013 when he was only 19. By early adulthood, he had already gotten quite a rap sheet for himself and gained multiple felony charges many years before his 2019 murders. This quick run of escalation in crime and behaviour was harmful, but he didn't actually spend long in prison at all. Like, naturally you'd think, oh, you've committed your first ever crime. Depending on the crime, we'll kind of let you off a little bit because it's your first crime. Your second crime, right, well, you've got a history of committing a crime, so this is your punishment. But now you've got, like, 5 different individual felonies, and we're only going to stick you in prison for, like, maybe a year. This is where the justice system not only failed both of these women who were murdered by Wade Wilson, but in a way, I think they genuinely also failed Wade Wilson. No, I don't, actually. I take that back. Fuck him. He's a disgusting, terrible person. But the justice system absolutely did fail these 2 women, and I personally truly think that their murders could have been well avoided if Wade did the prison time that he should have done. In 2019, he was now heavily using drugs. He was incredibly unstable mentally, but also he was not in housing. He was considered a drifter with nowhere to go and no way to help himself due to his large hand of felonies. Nobody would hire him, nobody wanted him around. He wasn't actually doing good for himself, but he did somehow get a girlfriend who would house him sometimes. He had 2 girlfriends, actually. One of them, she was actually involved in this, but not in the way that you think she'd be involved in this. She didn't help with any of the murders. She wasn't involved in that. She actually helped him get caught. 2019 is when he murders both of these women literally within a 12-hour slot. Christine Melton was born in either 1983 or 1984, which would have made her 35 years old when she was murdered by Wade Wilson. She grew up in Illinois before moving to Cape Coral, Florida with her family. Christine was close with her mother Kate, who she cared for as Kate was showing early signs of Alzheimer's. Yet her mother's memory of Christine was so strong and so loved to the point that after Christine was ultimately murdered, her mother still believed that Kate was alive, well, and married. Christine's brother described her as the glue that kept the family connected, somebody everybody trusted and loved. She was a massive fan of Halloween. She'd decorate her whole entire duplex. She'd go out with her friends and have multiple different outfits. She loved Halloween so much. Anything spooky, anything weird, anything like that, she loved it. It was just part of something that she really enjoyed to do. And she was known for, like, the Halloween. Christine's friends would say she was super kind and non-judgmental. She was fun and loving and light-hearted, and somebody with a quick wit and a sharp sense of humour. She was well loved by her friends. Her friends loved to socialise with her, and they'd come round and spend time with her and her cat in her duplex, because she lived alone in a duplex in Cape Coral with her cat. And that's important. This is really important to the case. Christine was a waitress where she became incredibly close with a friend, Stephanie Sailors, who was with her the night of her death. She was a treasured friend and co-worker. She was considered irreplaceable by everybody who knew her. On October the 6th, 2019, Christine and Stephanie went to Bud Alive, and this is a bar in Fort Myers where they both met Wade Wilson, who would have been 25 years old at the time, a decade younger than Christine. They had no connection to each other, but the three spent the night together. After the bar closed, they spent several hours at the home of a mutual acquaintance, Jason Shepard, before the trio went back to Christine's duplex in the early hours of October the 7th. Once all three of them got back to the duplex, Stephanie Sailors left quite quickly. She just wanted to go home. It was really, really early in the morning or very, very late at night. Once she left, Wilson Wade strangled Christine to death while she slept in her own bed. That is the most violating, disgusting, disturbing thing that I genuinely think somebody could do. Not only have you left this woman completely defenseless, you did it in her own safe space, in her own home and in her own bed while she slept. That's disgusting. She let you into her personal space and you violated that. That's disgusting. Like you're actually a disgusting, insane person. You're actually insane for that. Not saying that anybody's going to argue any differently. Actually, I take that back. People do argue differently. Like, that's fucking insane. I'm just saying, that's insane. Police did later confirm that he took her life without a fight or any warning. She didn't fight back. She couldn't fight back because she was asleep and then she was dead. And I think that's a weak pussy thing to do. I hate this man. 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 He then stole her car and fled the home, leaving Christine's body behind. Not only have you killed her in her own home, you robbed her car. He then attempted to visit his supposed girlfriend, Melissa Montanez. You've just killed somebody and you're like, hey babe. And in the same morning of killing Christine, he was calling his girlfriend on Christine's phone. He then went to her job and tried to force her into Christine's stolen car, an attack which she did escape, and then reported to the police his location and his behaviour because he was going batshit crazy. And she said, I don't feel safe, he's saying crazy shit, and he's tried to kidnap me. This is good that she actually reported it, because it gives the police a base to work off when trying to find and arrest him. After this failed attempt, Wade Wilson stayed on the road after his failed abduction and started looking for what we assume would have been a potential victim in the early morning on October the 7th. Because why else are you driving around in some woman's car that you've murdered? You're not just driving to the local 7-Eleven to get some milk. No, you're probably looking for somebody else to kill. This is where he saw Diane Ruiz walking down the street in Cape Coral. Diane Ruiz was a 43-year-old woman born in either 1975 or 1976. She was a mother to two sons, Brandon Kier, around 29 years old, and Zane Romero, around 19 years old. She was also engaged to be married. She was completely devoted to her family, with her sons describing her as a strong, loving mother. People didn't just know Diane, they felt her presence wherever she went. She was a bartender at the Moose Lodge in Cape Coral and had worked there for at least 5 years. Co-workers described her as cheerful, dedicated, and dependable, never missing a shift, and was a central presence at the bar. She wasn't considered just an employee, she was the heartbeat of the bar, locals and regulars being able to remember her as such a high-spirited, happy person. The day that she was killed was an ordinary day for her. She was walking to her 10 a.m. shift at the Moose Lodge the morning of October the 7th, just a few hours after Christine was murdered. Wade pulled up next to her in the stolen car, asking for directions to a nearby school. Diane felt somewhat safe enough to get in the car, showing her natural, lovely, kind, just helpful, bubbly, just soulful personality, and she truly believed that she would have been helping somebody. Wilson then turned in the car and attacked her. He beat her and attempted to strangle her, and that's when Diane started to fight back. He broke multiple bones in her body just from punching her, but that was not good enough for him. She was trying to escape, she tried to get the door open, and Wade saw that, but he couldn't have it considering that he'd already had a failed abduction attempt, and he needed to either cover his evidence or kill her. That was kind of the only option. I truly believe that was his intention anyway. There was not one part of him that would have even thought of letting him go. He was going to kill her one way or another. He pushed her out of the car and then ran her over repeatedly. And the way that he describes this in his interviews are sickening. Genuinely sickening. This would have not only broken the majority of bones in her body, if not all of them. That was considered the ultimate demise of Diane Ruiz. Wade then disposed of her body in a remote field to try and avoid immediate discovery. He knew that he'd get discovered at one point, but he just didn't want it to be straight away. He wanted to still drive around and fuck about and have fun. The location was away from roads and heavily trafficked areas. It was just this massive fuck-off field. Her body was then found 3 days later on October the 10th. Her body was left out there in the cold, alone, beaten, bruised, bloody, and dead for 3 days. When she didn't turn up to work, people got concerned and they were reaching out to family who also couldn't get in contact with her. This led the police to be called and to add on to the previous police report from his then girlfriend. Wade was dangerous and he needed to be caught quickly before escalating even further. And he would have escalated even further. Of course he'd escalate even further. Wade remained visible to potential witnesses and he was making calls off Christine's phone and interacting with people he knew to try and create digital and eyewitness proof that if he did get caught, he could say that he was here and he was doing that, and there'd be some sort of backing to it. That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to create a web of witnesses of saying, I was here, but he was also here, but he was also there. This was premeditated. Like, this wasn't just like I'm going to kill people. And maybe it did start as I was going to kill people, but it definitely didn't end like that. During this violent assault and murder, the Cape Coral and Fort Myers police were quickly working together to get information on exactly what they were going up against. They already had the critical detail from Melissa Montana's, which was a stolen car, the description of who they were looking for, the fact that he was incredibly violent and aggressive, and possible locations of where he might travel to. Officers were able to quickly track Christine Melton's stolen car through sightings, witnesses, and digital records such as phone activity. The stolen car quickly linked Wade to the first murder, as this was Christine's car, and upon realising that this was Christine's car that had been taken, then stumbled across Christine's dead body. This gave police a more than probable cause to locate and stop him in any way possible. Wade still didn't go into hiding, which made him a lot easier to find as he was still moving around public areas. It went from maybe not wanting to be found because he was hiding the body to, I don't really care if I get found, so I'm going to drive around all these public areas and be really, 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 really easy to find because I'm here and I'm in a car that I'm probably sure that you're looking for because it's robbed and it's not my car. The day that he murdered these women, he called up his biological father, Stephen, and admitted this all. He admitted specifically what he did, how he did it, but never really went into why he did it, which is, in my opinion, still one of the most confusing things about this case, because why do you just fucking kill people for no fucking reason? There's something wrong with you. Oh, obviously there's something wrong with him, because he's a fucking psycho murderer. There was not one part of remorse in his voice, and Stephen aggressively testified against this, that if anything, he sounded excited to tell him, hey, I'm so excited to tell you that I fucking killed people. Stephen was about 40 at this time as well. Like Stephen was a 40-year-old man who didn't really have a lot of contact with his biological son, only when his son needed things. So if he saw his son calling him, and it wasn't even his son's phone, it was Christine's phone. Then, like, hey dad, I've just fucking murdered loads of people. And you're happy? Stephen did call the police though. He called the police and said, hey, this is what he's just admitted to me. He said all of these things, and this is where he's saying that he is right now. Get him. Wade's girlfriend and Wade's biological father both really helped in being able to track him down and locate him. Within a few hours of Diane Ruiz's murder, he was stopped and arrested by law enforcement. He didn't fight, he just went with them, and this put an end to brutality and murder he brought on a spree just hours before. Just like that. At the time of the arrest, the evidence found linked him to both murders quite quickly. Not only was the car literally Christine's and Christine was dead, Diane's blood would have been in that car and around the car and surrounding the car. It would have been on the wheels, it would have been on the paintwork, it would have been in the interior. It was on him. It was everywhere. But Wilson did also quickly confess to both murders, and they didn't really need to push him. It was just like, what happened? He was like, this is what I did. And he was also telling the police information that only the murderer would have known. Only the murderer. Nobody else would have been able to tell the police all of these specific pieces of detail. Just a warning, this is where it gets genuinely disgusting. The way that he spoke about Diane Ruiz's murder, I suggest if you're eating right now, you put it down. He said to prosecutors, which is insanely morbid, that he rolled Diane out of the car, got back in, and ran her over until she looked like spaghetti. You were speaking about a mother, a friend, a daughter, a fiance, a woman, a person that you killed like that. You ran her over until she looked like spaghetti. When he was recounting the killing to investigators, he was relaxed, he was open, and he was more than happy to speak. And he described himself as the devil, because this is who he became when he was under the influence. He'd go on this rampage and he would become the devil. You'd sniff a bit of coke and you'd suddenly become El Diablo. A month later, when he had his only actual proper interview, and this was with NBC2, he would then go and change his tune. So on November the 15th, 2019, he said this about the murders: that Christine Melton was alive and well when he left her home in her car, and that Diane Ruiz left his car alive and had dropped her off at a bus stop. Two things that are obviously not true. He also stated, I agree that their deaths are tragic and sad, but do I find it strange? No. Because I know what I've done and what I have not. When asked if he killed the women, he said, I'm not a monster, I'm not a saint, I've made bad decisions. Yeah, but did you kill them though? Because you're saying that you did and now you're saying that you didn't. Did you kill them though? I feel like you did, babe. These statements fully contradicted what he told his biological dad Stephen and the police. In a month, he's changed his tune. The confessions given to the police and his father were key evidence at the trial and sentencing. So him denying this in the media would appear to be attempts at avoiding some sort of social responsibility publicly, but luckily courts rely on police interrogation and documented confessions and not what you tell the media. The court process was long, from the first court appearance to his sentencing. There's a lot of things that were involved in why this took so long, but obviously he was arrested in 2019 and then was denied bond due to the severity of the crimes. And because of the crimes, this would be considered a capital murder case. And a capital murder case means that the death penalty was on the table. Death penalties move really slow when it comes to trial and conviction. So for the next 4 years, there were multiple things that needed to be evaluated. Defense attorneys were filing motions to suppress evidence, including confessions and statements, which would have understandably slowed this down even further. Mental health evaluations were also ordered to make sure that he was actually fit to stand trial. Wade was also picking up additional charges in jail, including battery and drug-related offences, which made scheduling incredibly difficult to put together. And then also COVID-19 pandemic. This significantly made huge court delays nationally, also internationally, but with this case, it pushed it back literally about 5 years, like end of 2019 to mid 2024. Yet, finally, the trial began in June 2024. Finding a set of jury was quite difficult due to potential jurors being dismissed as they had an understandable emotional reaction to the case facts. They were also trying to cut out people who were too aware of the case to make sure that this was a fair trial. These are all normal things for cases that can end with the death penalty and include brutal and gruesome murders. The trial worked in multiple phases. First phase was the guilt phase, and this was between June the 4th and June the 12th, 2024. This phase was focused on if Wade was actually the murderer and if he actually committed these crimes. There was graphic testimony about Christine Melton's murder, detailed forensics linking Wilson to both cases, testimony about him stealing the car, evidence about Diane Ruiz being attacked, ran over and left in a field, but then also the recordings of Wade Wilson confessing. June 12th, 2024, after deliberation, Wade Wilson was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, grand theft of a motor vehicle, burglary, battery, and petite theft. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read, but the family members of both victims were emotional, finally hearing that they were going to be given some sort of relief, but nothing, absolutely nothing, to fix the horrors this man had put their family and their babies through. The next phase was the penalty phase. This was June the 25th to the 26th. This really only took just under 1 day. This phase was determining death penalty versus life without parole. Prosecutors argued that the murders were heinous, atrocious and cruel, but also they were cold, calculated and premeditated. Yet the defence fought that he had a troubled childhood, substance abuse and mental health problems. Like I said earlier in the video, his drug abuse was constantly brought up as no, he's not that bad. He just started smoking weed when he was 14 and it got worse, so he killed people. Shut the fuck up. Actually shut up. This man brutally murdered people and you're no, he just was doing so many drugs. This was where the victim impact statements were also shared, and I can tell you now, there wasn't really one dry eye in that courtroom, and the jury was so affected by the way that people were speaking about these 2 women, because we had mothers, we had friends, we had daughters, we had a fiance. These were people, these are people like you and me. You look at the people around you who you love and love you back. These are the people who are having to give those victim impact statements. And that's hard because you are mourning and you have to look at the person who is the reason for your mourning and then speak about the person that you love. That's rough. That's rough and that's tough and that's fucking... You've got to be so strong to be able to do that, and the people who spoke were so strong. Now, keep in mind, Florida law now allows the death penalty sentences to have at least 8 jurors agreeing to the death penalty. I think normally it's you want the whole jury to completely agree, but you can have 8 agreeing and 3 not agreeing to the death penalty. Well, 4 not agreeing to the death penalty, which is, fair fucking enough. Majority wins. So the jury votes were as followed. For the murder of Christine Melton, it was 9-3 for death. And for Diane Ruiz, it was 10-2. Wade Wilson would be put to death under the Florida law. There was one last phase, which was split into 2. On August the 27th, 2024. And this was the Spencer hearing and the final sentencing. The Spencer hearing allows the defence one last chance to argue against the death penalty. Everybody who gets the death penalty will get this. The final fight was pushing for Wilson's mental state and his background and his upbringing. Wade's adopted parents wanted people to realise that there was still a person behind this situation. And I get that you love your son, I get that, but there was a person behind both of these women who were killed. You didn't care then, why do you care now? You pick and you choose. Your son's a murderer, lock him up. But this point was constantly pushed, and the prosecutors pushed back at it, reiterating that his brutality and lack of remorse was unexcusable. There is no excuse to what he did at all. The court was reported to be quiet and heavy and exhausted. The final part of this phase was the sentencing. Later the same day, Judge Nicholas Thomas formally sentenced Wade Wilson to death for the murder of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz. The judge stated that the crimes were exceptionally brutal. The aggravating factors outweighed any mitigation, and the jury's recommendation was appropriate. Throughout this all, Wade did not speak. He was transferred to Florida's death row, and his case was automatically entered to the appeals process, which will take many years. They have to go through the Florida Supreme Court and potentially federal courts as well. Just a quick note, a death sentence doesn't necessarily mean that they'll get executed same day, or obviously not. Inmates will often spend decades on death row because there's so many steps and hoops that you have to go through. So there's no set date yet for Wade Wilson's execution, and it's unlikely that one will be scheduled in the next few years. Only after the case has gone through all of the appeals, any requests for clemency are exhausted, and the governor signs a death warrant can an execution date be set. And that also doesn't mean that once that date is set, it's going to be in a week or a month. It could be in 5-10 years. So the death penalty is basically life without parole, and either they kill you or you die in there. At the start of this video, I mentioned the fact that there was a strange obsessive attraction that people found in him that minimized his crimes and the people who were brutally murdered. This is a really important thing to talk about. This case became popular in the summer of 2024 when this case was being televised. There were a few things that played into the effect of the things that have came from this on social media and TikTok. One of the things stated were the attractive criminal effect. That doesn't even sound real, but it is. It's a real thing. It's like an actual fucking disorder. People took one look at Wade Wilson and saw a young, physically fit and heavily tattooed man and fell into some sort of internet crush with like a parasocial obsession. And they didn't see the convicted double murderer. They saw like, oh wow, you're a sexy hot inmate. And I'm not being funny. His face is covered in fucking tattoos. And he looks like a dickhead. I'm not being funny. You need therapy. You actually need therapy. Like, this guy's murdered 2 women and you're like, I'm gonna make TikTok edits about him. Get a life. People were circulating his mugshot and videos of him in the courtroom with no context. Like there was no context to who this guy was. And they were making like fan edits of him. You know when you see like edits of Henry Cavill? Now imagine that of a double convicted serial killer. Like, look at this. That's fucking weird. That's so fucking weird. Keep in mind though that TikTok's algorithm actually prioritizes visually striking content, but not really ones with nuance. It's like you could then make a TikTok being like, this is Wade Wilson and people think that he's incredibly fit, but he's actually murdered 2 people. That's not going to do as well as like I can fix him, which is so scary. Obviously, TikTok thrives on short form content. And when you have short form content, you're more likely to watch it. And if you watch it more, then it gets more views. And if it gets more views, then more other people will view it because it gets boosted and it gets pushed. It's algorithm. And we saw this happen aggressively with Wade Wilson, like so aggressively with Wade Wilson. And they were literally commenting like, hear me out, or I can fix him. You fucking can't. I can promise you that much. I genuinely believe that we have become so desensitized to true crime, like actual crime, because of like true crime YouTube videos where it's people romanticizing these killers and not actually speaking about the fucking victims. And it happens so much that instead of seeing the victims and the psychology and the warning signs and the actual justice, and it's now become like edits and thirst comments and parasocial relationships with criminals, and you fucking send them letters in prison, and you get in relationships with people behind bars and you marry them because it's like, I love a bad boy. People actually see Wade Wilson as a character. Like they don't see him as a real person who's committed violence. They're just like, he's so sexy. He's killed 2 women and you think that you can fix him because he's covered in some shitty prison done tattoos. This is dangerous though. Like this romanticization of people like this is dangerous. It's completely dangerous, and it's becoming a serious problem, and it will become a serious problem with future serial killers that fit like a general attraction level. They're like, oh my god, he's so fit, he's like such a fit guy, but he's like killed everybody, but it's okay because I can change him. Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz became footnotes in their own violation and murder. If they get mentioned at all. Like keep in mind, people didn't know the names of these women because they were making TikToks about their killer. The victims disappear when the murderer becomes the main character. It's not just disrespectful, it's harmful and it's sickening. Like, it is actually sickening. This can and will normalize extreme violence. Romanticizing violent offenders sends a fucking dangerous message. Like that brutality and desirability can coexist, and that violence can be excused by looks or behaviours, or that just the bad boy is misunderstood and he didn't mean it. Like, this will contribute to a culture that we already have forming, where red flags are ignored, abuse is reframed, and intensity and violence are aestheticized and fetishized. We also see this in like dark romance books, where it's like these same behaviours that we see that people are getting arrested for, but they're written down and they're in 2 pages, so it's like, fucking love him. And it's like, I'm not being funny, he's just killed the main character in that book, or he's like stalking that main character, and while she sleeps he does some dastardly things to her sleep body after drugging her so she doesn't realise what's going on. That's fucking strange. And if you were like fawning over this shit, you need to go like read your books if you really want to, but you should also be getting therapy at the same time. And I truly believe that. Like, I love a bit of like a dark book. I don't like dark romance books, like, if I can promise you that much. Like, I love a bit like a little kinky book where it's like, he was a cowboy and he was a hard worker. He was a serial cowboy, he started killing everybody, but it's alright because I saved the horse, now I can ride the cowboy. They're different. You see how those are different? And it's not even like there's like a thin line that you walk across. It's like, one's murder and violent crime and just genuinely shit things, and then the other's like, I live in a small town with a ranch. And the line is here, and it's on different fucking ends. Behaviour like this also encourages something called hybristophilia. And this is a psychological phenomenon where people feel attracted to violent people, specifically violent criminals. Well, we see it the most in violent criminals, but violent people. It's like you fetishize it. It's not new to TikTok. It's not really labelled as hybristophilia, but that's what it is. And it's being amplified, normalised, and becoming such a social and performative thing where like people have like TikToks just made, like TikTok accounts just for a serial killer. What was now a rare fixation, which you go to therapy for, is now being reinforced by likes and comments and shares and weird fucking edits on Pinterest. Attention like this, though, also is considered a currency to perpetrators. The majority of like violent murderers are also incredibly narcissistic and they love a bit of attention. You're giving them that attention. You're literally giving them that attention. This viral fame gives them posthumous powers. They're like, oh my god, I'm famous. I can literally say whatever the fuck I want to say right now, and people are going to fawn and fall at their knees for me because they love me so much. It validates their notoriety and that the fucked up things that they've done are going to lead to fame. And unfortunately it does. But I know for a fact that if any of you people came across face to face to Wade Wilson, you wouldn't fucking fall at your knees and gargle. If you were aware of his crimes, you'd hope to God that you'd run the other way, you absolute psychos. When we turn killers into icons, we start to risk teaching our children and the young people around us the the wrong lessons about what society values. The case of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz is disturbing. And it's not just because of the murder and how it was done and the way that it was spoken about, but it's also the fact that this was recent. The victims' families are alive and they are still grieving, and those wounds are still very much open. This case isn't history from 1922. This is a couple years ago. It's ongoing trauma. Wade Wilson isn't interesting because he's fit. He's infamous because 2 women lost their lives. When TikTok turns real violence into fantasy, the cost is paid by victims, families, and a culture that starts confusing cruelty for charisma. Thank you so much for watching this video. I suggest that you don't keep the way that you're feeling about hearing about this case to yourself, no matter how it made you feel. Talk to somebody about it, because taking in nearly an hour of information like this isn't normal nor nice. It's very common, but it's not normal or nice. So speak to somebody if you're not feeling very happy after listening to this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it though. I hope you guys enjoyed learning a bit more about this case if you didn't already know it, and seeing it from a different perspective. I've learned that when you hear multiple different people speak about the same case, I think it gives you a better outlook to it as well. So thank you so much for watching.